During a lavish party, the sound of shattering glass interrupted the celebration with an unexpected warning. A poor, dirty and hungry girl broke into the mansion and saved a boy locked inside a car under the scorching heat. As the guests watched in shock, the truth about the abandonment came to light. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the garage of the Hampton estate like a desperate alarm. The person responsible for that act was neither a staff member nor a guest at the luxurious party taking place outside. She was Lily Morgan, a skinny, poor 12-year-old girl who had discreetly entered the property simply looking for something to eat. Lily had been wandering through the wealthy neighborhoods of Greenwich, Connecticut for hours. Her foster home was 3 miles away, but she couldn't bear to return there. Not after Mrs. Patterson had locked the pantry again as punishment for Lily speaking during dinner. Her stomach growled painfully as she slipped through a gap in the hedges surrounding the Hampton estate, drawn by the sounds of celebration and the tantalizing aroma of grilled food. She hadn't planned to steal anything valuable. Just a plate of leftovers, maybe, or something no one would miss. But what she found in that garage changed everything. Inside a luxury SUV parked under the intense summer sun was a small boy, no older than 5, unconscious from the heat, completely forgotten for hours. The child's face was flushed red, his light brown hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. Through the tinted windows, Lily could see his small chest barely rising and falling. Lily's heart raced. She tried the door handles, locked. She banged on the windows, hoping someone might hear, but the sounds of the party drowned out her efforts. The garage was sweltering, at least 20 degrees hotter than outside, and the child inside the car was in serious danger. Without hesitation, Lily grabbed a heavy wrench from a nearby workbench and smashed the passenger side window. The alarm blared immediately, but she ignored it, reaching through the broken glass to unlock the door. Careful not to cut herself, she pulled the door open and unbuckled the unconscious boy from his car seat. He was limp in her arms, his skin hot to the touch. Lily had never carried anyone before, but adrenaline gave her strength as she lifted the boy and ran toward the sounds of the party, glass crunching under her worn-out sneakers. The celebration stopped immediately when she emerged from the side of the house. The music cut off, conversations ceased. All eyes turned to this unknown child carrying little Ethan Hampton, son of Maxwell Hampton, the millionaire businessman known for his real estate empire across New England. "He was locked in the car," Lily shouted, her voice cracking with panic. "He needs help." For a moment, no one moved. The guests, men in expensive suits, women draped in designer dresses and gleaming jewelry, just stared in shock. Then chaos erupted. "Oh my God, Ethan!" A man in his early 40s rushed forward, taking the boy from Lily's arms. Maxwell Hampton's face contorted with fear and confusion as he cradled his son. "Someone call 911. Several people immediately pulled out phones. A woman who identified herself as a doctor pushed through the crowd and began checking Ethan's vital signs. "He's severely dehydrated. Heat exhaustion. Possibly approaching heat stroke," she said, feeling his pulse. "We need to cool him down immediately. Get him inside, ice packs, cool water." As Maxwell carried his son toward the mansion, a tall, elegant woman in a champagne-colored dress stepped forward. Victoria Hampton's expression was a mixture of surprise and carefully controlled panic. "There must be some mistake," she said, her voice steady despite the situation. "I left him napping in the car with the air conditioning on. It must have malfunctioned." She placed a manicured hand on Maxwell's arm. "Darling, I checked on him just 15 minutes ago. He was fine." Maxwell didn't stop walking. "The car alarm just went off, Victoria. If someone had to break the window to get him out." "He wasn't fine." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly as they fell on Lily, who stood awkwardly in the midst of the chaos, suddenly very aware of her dirty jeans, faded t-shirt, and the fact that she had just smashed an expensive car window. "And who exactly are you?" Victoria asked, her tone suggesting Lily was somehow responsible for the situation rather than preventing a tragedy. Before Lily could answer, one of the security guards approached. "Sir, the garage cameras show the boy has been in the car for over 3 hours. No one has opened the door since Mrs. Hampton placed him there at 1:17 p.m. The silence that followed was deafening. Maxwell stopped walking and turned slowly to look at his wife, whose composed facade began to crack. "That's impossible," Victoria said, but her voice wavered. "I've been checking on him regularly." "We'll discuss this later," Maxwell said firmly, his jaw tight as he continued carrying Ethan inside. The doctor followed, giving instructions to household staff about bringing ice and water. Lily stood frozen, unsure what to do. She hadn't intended to create such chaos. She hadn't intended to be noticed at all. And now she was at the center of what seemed to be not just a medical emergency but a family crisis. An older woman with silver hair approached her gently. "Come inside, dear. You look hungry and we need to talk about what you saw." Lily hesitated but followed. The woman introduced herself as Eleanor Pierce, Maxwell's aunt. She led Lily to a quiet corner of the kitchen, while the rest of the house buzzed with activity around Ethan. "Here, eat," Eleanor said, placing a plate of food in front of Lily. Lily couldn't help herself. She ate quickly, the hunger of days taking over. Between bites, she explained how she'd been passing by looking for food and noticed the boy in the car. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she said, eyes downcast. "Trouble?" Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Child, you saved that boy's life. The trouble was already there. You just exposed it." In another part of the mansion, paramedics had arrived and were examining Ethan, who had regained consciousness and was responding well to the cooling treatments. Maxwell hadn't left his side for a second, while Victoria hovered nearby, her composure now fully restored, as she explained to anyone who would listen that it had been a terrible misunderstanding. "The security footage doesn't lie." "Mrs. Hampton," said Officer Bennett, who had arrived with the paramedics as standard procedure for such cases, "we'll need to review all of it." Victoria's perfect smile faltered. "Of course, officer. Whatever helps clear up this unfortunate situation." Maxwell sat beside his son, holding his small hand, his mind racing. The past few months flashed before him. Victoria's increasing detachment from Ethan, her insistence on hiring more nannies despite being home all day, the strange comments she made when she thought no one was listening, things he had dismissed as adjustment issues after her recent career change. He looked up to see Eleanor leading a thin, hesitant girl into the room. The child who had saved his son. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Lily." "Lily Morgan," she answered, her voice barely audible. "Lily," Maxwell repeated. "I believe I owe you my son's life. Thank you." The simple words cracked something open inside Lily, who had never been thanked for anything in her life. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. "Sir," a security guard interrupted, tablet in hand, "you should see this." The footage he showed Maxwell was clear. Victoria placing a sleeping Ethan in the car, deliberately turning off the engine and walking away. No air conditioning, no cracked windows, and 3 hours and 22 minutes without checking on him once. Maxwell's face hardened. He looked at his wife across the room, surrounded by concerned friends offering comfort for her terrible scare. For the first time, he saw something cold behind her perfect facade, and standing in the doorway was Lily, a child who had nothing but had given everything to save a stranger. In that moment, Maxwell Hampton's world shifted on its axis. Everything he thought he knew was called into question, while the truth stood before him in the form of a hungry child with a brave heart. The Hampton mansion fell into an uncomfortable silence after the guests departed. The paramedics had determined that Ethan didn't need hospitalization, but they'd instructed Maxwell to monitor him closely over the next 24 hours. The boy now slept peacefully in his bedroom, exhausted from his ordeal, but safely recovering under the watchful eye of Eleanor, who had refused to leave his side. In the study downstairs, Maxwell sat rigidly behind his mahogany desk, reviewing security footage for the third time. Each viewing only intensified the cold fury building inside him. The timestamps didn't lie. Neither did the deliberately casual way Victoria had walked away from the car, checking her reflection in a window before rejoining the party preparations. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Daniel Foster, his longtime friend and attorney, entered with 2 cups of coffee. He set one in front of Maxwell and took a seat across from him. "Where is she now?" Daniel asked quietly. In the guest room. I can't even look at her, Maxwell replied, his voice raw. And the girl? The social worker just arrived. Apparently Lily's been in foster care for the past 4 years. Current placement is with the Pattersons in Bridgeport. Maxwell pinched the bridge of his nose. She saved my son's life, Daniel. And now what? We just sent her back to some foster home. For now we have to follow protocol, Daniel said. But we can make sure she's properly taken care of. I've already spoken to the social worker about ensuring her current living situation is adequate. Maxwell nodded absently, his mind elsewhere. Did you see the footage? Daniel's face darkened. I did. Max, as your attorney, I need to be frank. This isn't just a domestic matter anymore. What Victoria did could constitute criminal child endangerment. The footage shows clear intent. I know, Maxwell whispered. I just can't understand it. Why would she? He couldn't finish the question. Daniel leaned forward. Max, there's something else you should know. I've had concerns about Victoria's behavior toward Ethan for months, but I didn't want to overstep. Last Christmas, when you were closing the Seattle deal, I saw her push him away rather roughly when he wanted a hug. When she noticed me watching, she laughed it off, said he'd spilled something on her dress. But there was no stain, Max. Maxwell closed his eyes, memories flooding back. Ethan's increasing reluctance to be alone with Victoria. The way he flinched sometimes when she moved too quickly near him. The accidents that seemed to happen only when Maxwell was away on business. I've been blind, he said, his voice breaking. My own son wasn't safe in his home and I didn't see it. You're seeing it now, Daniel assured him. That's what matters. In the kitchen, social worker Meredith Collins sat across from Lily, who was finishing her second bowl of soup. The girl ate methodically, as if afraid the food might be taken away at any moment. So, Lily, Meredith began gently, can you tell me why you were so far from your foster home today? Lily set down her spoon. Mrs. Patterson said I couldn't eat dinner because I talked during lunch. It's the 3rd time this week, she shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. I just needed to find something to eat. Meredith made a note. And is this a regular occurrence? The withholding of meals as punishment? It's not so bad, Lily said, looking down. Some homes were worse. Meredith's pen paused. In what ways, Lily? But Lily had already said too much. She shook her head, retreating into silence. 4 years in the system had taught her that saying too much only led to more trouble, more moves, more uncertainty. Meredith didn't press. Instead, she smiled kindly. What you did today was incredibly brave. You saved that little boy's life. For the first time, Lily's expression brightened slightly. Is he okay? Yes, he's going to be just fine, thanks to you. The kitchen door swung open and Maxwell entered. His face showed the strain of the day, but he managed a genuine smile when he saw Lily. Mr. Hampton, Meredith stood to greet him. I was just explaining to Lily that I'll be taking her back to her foster placement shortly. Maxwell glanced at Lily, noting how her shoulders slumped at these words. Actually, Ms. Collins, I'd like to discuss an alternative arrangement if possible. Lily looked up, confused. What kind of arrangement? Meredith asked cautiously. Maxwell took a seat at the table. I understand there are protocols to follow, but given the circumstances, I'd like to request temporary emergency guardianship of Lily. The social worker's eyebrows shot up. That's highly unusual, Mr. Hampton. There are procedures, background checks, home studies, all of which I'm prepared to expedite with whatever resources necessary, Maxwell interrupted. My attorney is already drawing up the paperwork. I'm not asking to circumvent the process, just to fast-track it. Lily stared at him, mouth slightly open. You want me to stay here? Maxwell turned to her, his expression softening. Lily, you saved my son's life today. But more than that, you showed courage and compassion that many adults lack. I think Ethan would benefit from having you around while he recovers. And frankly, after what you've been through today, I'd feel better knowing you're safe and well cared for here. It's not that simple, Meredith began, but Maxwell raised a hand. I understand, but surely there must be provisions for exceptional circumstances. I'm willing to undergo any necessary evaluations and comply with all requirements. I'm simply asking that Lily not be returned to a home where she's being deprived of food as punishment, while we work through the proper channels. At the mention of her current living situation, Meredith's expression changed. She looked at Lily thoughtfully, then back at Maxwell. I would need to speak with my supervisor and file an emergency petition with family court, she said slowly. And you would need to be fingerprinted and undergo at least a preliminary background check before I could even consider a temporary placement. I'll call the judge, came a voice from the doorway. Daniel stood there, cell phone in hand. Judge Watkins owes me a favor. We can have an emergency hearing first thing tomorrow morning. Lily looked between the adults, afraid to hope. Don't I get any say? She asked quietly. They all turned to her, slightly embarrassed that they'd been discussing her future without including her. Of course you do, Maxwell said. What do you want, Lily? Lily hesitated. She'd learned early on that wanting things usually led to disappointment, but the genuine concern in Maxwell's eyes made her brave. I'd like to stay, she said, at least until I know Ethan is okay. Meredith considered this. I'll need to inspect the accommodations and conduct a preliminary interview with you, Mr. Hampton, and I'll need to file a report about the current foster placement. The allegations of food withholding are serious. Of course, Maxwell agreed readily. As Meredith and Daniel stepped outside to make their respective calls, Lily looked at Maxwell with uncertainty. Why are you doing this? Really? She asked. You don't know me. Maxwell considered her question carefully. Sometimes, Lily, life shows you things you weren't looking for but desperately needed to see. Today you showed me what true courage looks like. You also helped me see some hard truths about my family that I've been avoiding. I think having you here might be good for all of us. Upstairs, Victoria paced the guest bedroom, phone pressed to her ear. Jonathan, you need to come over right now. Everything's falling apart, she hissed. Some street urchin broke into our property, and now Max is treating me like I'm some kind of monster. On the other end of the line, Jonathan Reynolds, Victoria's personal trainer and secret lover for the past year, sounded nervous. Calm down, Vic. What exactly happened? Ethan was napping in the car. The car? Jonathan interrupted. Why was he in the car? Victoria paused. That's not important. What matters is Max is watching security footage and talking to lawyers. I think he knows about us. Jesus, Victoria. Is the kid okay? He's fine, she snapped. Everybody's making such a big deal over nothing. I just need you to come over and help me figure this out. I don't think that's a good idea, Jonathan said slowly. Maybe we should cool things off for a while. Victoria's perfectly manicured nails dug into her palm. Don't you dare back out on me now. Remember, I have those videos of us. How do you think your wife would feel about seeing those? The line went silent for a moment. You're threatening me. After what you did to your own kid. You're crazy, Victoria. Stay away from me. The call ended. Victoria stared at her phone in disbelief. Everything was unraveling so quickly. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The plan had been simple. Create a situation where Maxwell would be too devastated to question the divorce terms she'd already prepared with her own attorney. Jonathan would console her through the tragic accident, and they would emerge from the appropriate mourning period ready to start their new life together with half of Maxwell's considerable fortune. But that girl had ruined everything. Victoria took a deep breath. Composing herself, she could still salvage this. Maxwell might be angry, but he'd always forgiven her before. She just needed to play her cards right, appear appropriately remorseful, perhaps suggest she needed professional help for postpartum depression, even though Ethan was 5 years old. Maxwell had always been susceptible to her tears. Downstairs, unaware of his wife's machinations, Maxwell showed Lily to what would be her room, at least temporarily. It was a guest suite, elegantly decorated in soothing blues and creams. I know it's a bit formal, he said apologetically, but we can redecorate if you stay longer. Make it more your own. Lily walked around the room in wonder. It was bigger than the entire living room at the Patterson house. She'd never had a room to herself before. It's perfect, she whispered, running her hand along the soft comforter. Maxwell smiled, his first genuine smile since the chaos began. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a busy day. He turned to leave but paused at the door. Lily, thank you again. After he left, Lily sat on the edge of the bed, hardly daring to believe this was real. She'd entered the Hampton estate looking for a meal, and had instead found what might be her chance at a real home. But experience had taught her not to trust good fortune. Nothing ever lasted, especially not for kids like her. Morning light filtered through the curtains of Lily's new room, waking her gently. For a moment she was disoriented by the softness of the bed, the spaciousness surrounding her. Then the events of yesterday came flooding back. She sat up, heart racing, wondering if she'd dreamed it all. A soft knock at the door made her jump. "Lily? Are you awake?" It was Eleanor, Maxwell's aunt, her voice warm and kind. "Yes," Lily called, quickly smoothing down her tangled hair. Eleanor entered, carrying a tray with breakfast and a shopping bag. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, placing the tray on a small table by the window. "And I brought you some fresh clothes. They might be a bit big, but they'll do until we can get you something proper." Lily stared at the tray. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit, and orange juice. More food than she'd seen at one time in months. "Thank you," she said softly, still not quite believing her situation. Eleanor smiled. "Eat up, dear. It's going to be a busy day. The social worker will be back at 9, and Judge Watkins has agreed to hold a special hearing at 11. Lily picked up a piece of toast. "What exactly is going to happen at this hearing?" "If all goes well, Maxwell will be granted temporary emergency guardianship. It's just the first step, mind you. There will be more formal proceedings later if—" Eleanor paused. "Well, if things progress in that direction." Lily nodded, trying not to hope too much. "How's Ethan?" "Much better this morning. He's been asking about you, actually. Keeps calling you his rescue angel." Eleanor's eyes crinkled with amusement. "He'd like to see you if you're up for it." After breakfast and a shower in the most luxurious bathroom she'd ever seen, Lily changed into the clothes Eleanor had brought, a simple blue sundress that hung a bit loose on her thin frame, and a light cardigan. She followed Eleanor down the hall to Ethan's room. The little boy was sitting up in bed, surrounded by stuffed animals. His face lit up when he saw Lily. "You're the girl who saved me," he exclaimed, bouncing slightly. Lily smiled shyly. "I'm glad you're feeling better. Daddy says you're staying with us. Are you going to be my new sister?" His directness caught Lily off guard. I'm just visiting for now," she answered carefully. "But I want you to stay forever," Ethan declared with the absolute certainty only a 5-year-old could muster. "You're not mean like Victoria." Eleanor cleared her throat. "Ethan, remember what we discussed about using proper names for adults?" Ethan frowned. "But Daddy called her Victoria last night. And she is mean. She told me if I was a good boy and took a nap in the car, she would take me for ice cream. But she never came back." A heavy silence fell over the room. Lily glanced at Eleanor, whose lips had pressed into a thin line. "Well," Eleanor said finally, "your father will be up to see you soon. Why don't you show Lily your dinosaur collection while I go check on breakfast?" After Eleanor left, Ethan eagerly pulled out a box of plastic dinosaurs from under his bed, seemingly untroubled by yesterday's events. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, listening as he explained the name and diet of each prehistoric creature, with surprising detail. "This is a Parasaurolophus. He's a vegetarian, and this is T-Rex. He eats meat, but he wouldn't eat the Parasaurolophus because they didn't live at the same time. That's what Daddy taught me." "Your dad taught you all this?" Lily asked, impressed. Ethan nodded enthusiastically. "Daddy knows everything about dinosaurs. He takes me to the museum all the time. Victoria never comes, though. She says museums are boring." As they played, Lily gradually coaxed more information from Ethan. It became clear that Victoria had little involvement in his day-to-day life. The boy spoke of his father with adoration, of his nanny, Miss Rebecca, with affection, of Aunt Eleanor with fondness, but mentioned Victoria only in passing, usually in the context of her absence or disapproval. "One time I wanted to show her my drawing from school, but she said her hands were wet from lotion," Ethan said matter-of-factly. "She didn't want to get her hands dirty." Downstairs, Maxwell was meeting with his legal team in the study. Daniel had brought in Patricia Wheeler, a specialist in family law, and they were reviewing their strategy for the hearing. "We have the security footage," Daniel said, plus witness statements from the doctor, who treated Ethan and the security staff. "It's enough to support both the emergency removal petition and eventually a formal motion for full custody." Patricia nodded. "The footage is compelling, but Victoria will argue it was a one-time lapse in judgment. We need to establish a pattern." Maxwell frowned. "I've been blind to so much," he admitted. "Looking back, there have been incidents, things I dismissed or rationalized." "We'll need documentation," Patricia said. Witness statements from household staff, nannies, anyone who's observed Victoria's interactions with Ethan. Rebecca Shaw, Ethan's nanny, has been with us for 3 years, Maxwell said. She's mentioned concerns before, but I didn't want to believe them. Daniel made a note. We'll speak with her immediately. What about medical records? Has Ethan had any unexplained injuries or frequent accidents? Maxwell thought for a moment. There was an incident last year. He fell down the stairs while I was away on business. Victoria said he was running in the house. And a few months ago, he had a bad allergic reaction to something he ate, even though Victoria knew about his nut allergy. Patricia's expression darkened. We'll need statements from his pediatrician and any specialists he's seen. She hesitated. Maxwell, I have to ask, do you believe Victoria would intentionally harm Ethan? The question hung heavy in the room. Maxwell ran a hand over his face. 24 hours ago, I would have said absolutely not. Now, I don't know what she's capable of. The conversation was interrupted by a knock. Eleanor entered, her expression troubled. Max, Victoria's asking to speak with you. She says it's urgent. Maxwell sighed. I suppose I can't avoid her forever. Actually, Patricia interjected, until we have the emergency protective order in place, it might be best if you limit direct interaction. Anything you say could be used against you. She's still my wife, Maxwell said, though the words felt hollow now. And she's also someone who may have deliberately endangered your son, Daniel reminded him gently. Let us handle this, Max. In another part of the mansion, Victoria was growing increasingly desperate. Her calls to Jonathan had gone unanswered. Her personal attorney had advised her to obtain her own legal representation for the criminal allegations. And now Maxwell was refusing to see her. She paced the guest room, mind racing. She hadn't expected things to spiral so far out of control. It was supposed to be simple. A tragic accident would free her from a marriage that had grown stifling, from a child she'd never bonded with. Maxwell's fortune would fund her new life with Jonathan, far from the constraints of Connecticut society. But that homeless girl had ruined everything. Victoria's phone rang. She grabbed it eagerly, hoping it was Jonathan, but the caller ID showed her mother's name instead. Victoria? What's going on? Madeleine Cooper just called me, saying there was some incident with Ethan at your party yesterday. Victoria sank onto the bed. It's all a misunderstanding, Mother. Ethan fell asleep in the car, and the air conditioning malfunctioned. He's fine. There was a pause. That's not what Madeleine said. She said Maxwell is filing for emergency custody and that there's security footage of you leaving Ethan in a hot car deliberately. That's ridiculous, Victoria scoffed, though her voice wavered. Who would believe I'd harm my own child? Would you? Her mother asked sharply. Because if there's one thing I know about you, Victoria, it's that you've never wanted to be a mother. You made that abundantly clear from the moment you found out you were pregnant. The accusation stung with its truth. Victoria had never wanted children. She'd only agreed to have Ethan because Maxwell wanted a family so badly, and she'd feared he might leave her otherwise. She'd done her duty, carried the child, given birth, played the role of devoted mother in public. But in private, she'd detached herself from the boy, leaving his care to nannies and Maxwell. I need your help, Mother, Victoria said, changing tactics. Maxwell has lost his mind. He's let some street urchin into our home, and now he's treating me like a criminal. Her mother sighed heavily. I'll call Gerald Harrison. He's the best criminal defense attorney in New York. You're going to need him, Victoria. Criminal defense? Mother, you can't possibly think. What I think doesn't matter, her mother interrupted. What matters is what that security footage shows. Gerald will meet you at your house this afternoon. The call ended, leaving Victoria more isolated than before. She moved to the window, looking out at the manicured gardens where yesterday's party had taken place. Everything had been perfect then, or at least had appeared perfect. Now her carefully constructed life was crumbling, and she had no one to blame but herself. Meanwhile, Meredith Collins had returned and was conducting a thorough inspection of the Hampton estate, accompanied by Eleanor. The social worker made notes about the home environment, safety measures, and available resources for Lily's care. The girl would have her own room, bathroom, study space, Eleanor explained as they toured the house. We have excellent schools nearby, and Maxwell has already discussed arranging for therapy, to help her process her past trauma. Meredith nodded, impressed despite herself. And what about daily supervision? Mr. Hampton travels frequently for business, I understand. He's already spoken to his executive team about reducing travel for the foreseeable future, Eleanor replied. And I live here full-time. Plus there's Rebecca, Ethan's nanny, and a full household staff. Lily would never be without proper supervision. As they passed Ethan's room, they heard laughter, both Ethan's high-pitched giggles and Lily's softer chuckles. Meredith paused, listening. The sound of children playing normally would be unremarkable, but for Lily it was significant. In the 4 years Meredith had known her, she'd rarely seen the girl truly relaxed around others. They seemed to have bonded quickly, Meredith observed. Eleanor smiled. Ethan's been asking for a sibling for years. And Lily? Well, I think she needed someone to protect as much as she needed protection herself. As the morning progressed, the household prepared for the court hearing. Maxwell changed into a conservative suit, lawyers reviewed documents, and Eleanor helped Lily get ready. The temporary emergency guardianship hearing would be just the beginning of a long legal process. But it was a crucial first step. For Lily, who had learned to expect disappointment, it was difficult to believe that something good might actually be happening. As Eleanor helped her brush her hair, she finally voiced the fear that had been growing inside her. What if the judge says no? What if I have to go back to the Pattersons? Eleanor's hands stilled for a moment. Lily, no matter what happens today, you will not be returning to a home where you're deprived of food as punishment. That much I can promise you. But I might not stay here either, Lily persisted. Eleanor turned the girl to face her. Life rarely gives us certainties, my dear. But I've known Maxwell for his entire life. And when he sets his mind to something, he doesn't give up easily. He believes you belong here, at least for now, and he will fight for that. Lily nodded, trying to draw strength from Eleanor's confidence. In just 24 hours, her life had changed completely. Yesterday, she'd been hungry and alone, sneaking onto an estate in search of food. Today, she was preparing to attend a court hearing that might give her a real home, even if only temporarily. As they prepared to leave, Lily stopped by Ethan's room to say goodbye. The boy was sitting up in bed, coloring. Will you come back? He asked anxiously. Lily hesitated, not wanting to make promises she couldn't keep. I'll try, she said carefully. Ethan considered this, then solemnly handed her his favorite dinosaur figurine, the Parasaurolophus. Take him with you. For good luck. Lily accepted the plastic dinosaur, touched by the gesture. I'll keep him safe, she promised. As she left the room, she squeezed the small figurine in her pocket, a talisman against the uncertainty ahead. For the first time in years, Lily allowed herself to hope. The Fairfield County Courthouse stood imposing against the clear summer sky, its classical architecture a stark reminder of the gravity of legal proceedings within its walls. Maxwell guided Lily up the stone steps, his hand protectively on her shoulder. Daniel and Patricia walked ahead, briefcases in hand, while Meredith Collins followed behind, her expression professionally neutral. Remember, Maxwell said quietly to Lily as they approached the entrance, just answer the judge's questions honestly. Don't be nervous. Lily nodded, though butterflies swarmed in her stomach. She'd been in courtrooms before. Each foster placement had involved legal proceedings, but never as the center of attention. The plastic dinosaur Ethan had given her pressed against her palm, a small comfort. Inside, they were directed to a smaller courtroom for the emergency hearing. Judge Watkins, a stern-looking woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair, was already seated at the bench reviewing documents. The room was mostly empty except for court officials, though Victoria sat on the opposite side with a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit whom Lily assumed was her lawyer. Victoria's eyes narrowed when she saw Lily. The girl instinctively moved closer to Maxwell. All rise, the bailiff announced, and the proceedings began. Judge Watkins reviewed the petition for emergency temporary guardianship, then looked up over her reading glasses. This is highly unusual, Mr. Hampton. You're seeking temporary guardianship of a minor with whom you have no prior relationship or familial connection, while simultaneously requesting an emergency custody order for your own child against your wife. Explain to me why these matters should be considered together. Patricia Wheeler stepped forward. Your Honor, the cases are inextricably linked. The minor, Lily Morgan, was responsible for rescuing the Hampton son from a life-threatening situation, a situation that we allege was deliberately created by Mrs. Hampton. Victoria's lawyer shot to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. These are unfounded accusations. My client has not been charged with any crime." "Not yet," Daniel murmured, just loudly enough to be heard. Judge Watkins raised a hand. "Let's maintain decorum. Mr. Sawyer, your objection is noted, but this is not a criminal proceeding. I am here to determine what is in the best interest of both minors involved." She turned to Meredith. "Ms. Collins, as the representative from Child Protective Services, what is your assessment of Miss Morgan's current placement?" Meredith stepped forward, opening her file. "Your Honor, I conducted an emergency investigation of Lily's foster home last night and this morning. I can confirm that food has been regularly withheld as punishment, which violates our placement regulations. Additionally, there have been 3 prior complaints about the Pattersons that were investigated but not substantiated. And your recommendation?" "Based on my preliminary assessment, I believe it would be in Lily's best interest to be removed from the Patterson home immediately. As for Mr. Hampton's petition for temporary guardianship, while unusual, my initial home study indicates that he could provide a safe and stable environment for Lily, while a more permanent placement is determined." Judge Watkins nodded thoughtfully. "And what about Lily's wishes? She is 12, old enough for her preference to be considered." All eyes turned to Lily. The judge's gaze softened slightly. "Lily, would you be comfortable temporarily staying with Mr. Hampton and his family?" Lily swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Honor," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. I feel safe there." Victoria made a derisive sound, quickly silenced by a sharp look from the judge. "Mr. Sawyer," Judge Watkins continued, "I understand your client objects to both petitions." "On what grounds?" Victoria's lawyer stepped forward smoothly. "Your Honor, regarding the custody matter, Mrs. Hampton acknowledges a regrettable lapse in judgment, but maintains it was an isolated incident during a stressful event. She has been a devoted mother for 5 years, with no prior incidents. As for the guardianship petition, Mrs. Hampton has serious concerns about the influence of an unknown child, with a troubled background on their son." Maxwell tensed beside Lily, but remained silent. "Your Honor," Patricia countered, "we have evidence suggesting this was not an isolated incident, but rather part of a pattern of neglect and possibly deliberate endangerment." Judge Watkins raised an eyebrow. "Evidence?" Patricia nodded to Daniel, who approached with a flash drive. "Security footage from the Hampton residence. Your Honor, it clearly shows Mrs. Hampton placing the child in the vehicle, deliberately turning off all cooling systems, and leaving him there for over 3 hours during a heat advisory. Additionally, we have affidavits from household staff documenting concerning behavior toward the child." The judge accepted the flash drive and instructed her clerk to prepare it for viewing. "This is deeply troubling, if accurate. Mr. Sawyer, was your client aware of this footage?" Victoria's lawyer hesitated. "We've had limited time to prepare, Your Honor." "I'll take that as a no," Judge Watkins said dryly. She turned to Victoria directly. "Mrs. Hampton, given the seriousness of these allegations, do you wish to make a statement before I view this evidence?" Victoria rose, the picture of dignified distress in her tailored blue suit. "Your Honor, I love my son more than anything. What happened yesterday was a terrible mistake, one I will regret for the rest of my life. I thought the air conditioning was on. I would never deliberately harm Ethan." Judge Watkins studied her for a long moment. "We'll see what the evidence shows." She turned to her clerk. "Let's view the footage now." The lights dimmed and a screen lowered from the ceiling. The security footage was crystal clear, showing Victoria leading a sleepy Ethan to the car, buckling him in, then deliberately turning the car off and walking away, checking her reflection in a window before rejoining the party. The timestamp showed 1:17 p.m. The footage then jumped forward, showing periodic checks of the exterior camera, no one approaching the car until 4:39 p.m. When Lily appeared, noticed something wrong, and broke the window. The courtroom was silent when the lights came back up. Judge Watkins's expression had hardened. "Mrs. Hampton," she said coldly, "that footage directly contradicts your statement to this court. It appears you not only left your child in a dangerous situation, but also lied about it under oath." Victoria paled, Her lawyer quickly leaned over to whisper something, but she pushed him away. "It's not what it looks like," she insisted, her composure cracking. I was going to check on him, but the party got busy and time got away from me." "For 3 hours and 22 minutes? The judge's voice was ice. "During a heat advisory?" Victoria fell silent, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal's. Judge Watkins turned to Maxwell. "Mr. Hampton, were you aware of any issues between your wife and son before this incident?" Maxwell cleared his throat. "I've been willfully blind, Your Honor. Looking back, there were signs I ignored or rationalized. Ethan's nanny raised concerns several times, but I dismissed them. I believed Victoria when she said Ethan's accidents were just normal childhood mishaps." "And what changed your perspective?" Maxwell glanced at Lily. "Seeing a stranger, a child herself, risk everything to save my son when his own mother had endangered him. It forced me to confront the truth I'd been avoiding." The judge considered this, then made her decision. "Based on the evidence presented, I'm granting the emergency protective order and awarding temporary sole custody of Ethan Hampton to his father, pending a full hearing. Mrs. Hampton is to have no unsupervised contact with the child until further notice." Victoria gasped, but the judge continued. "Regarding the petition for temporary guardianship of Lily Morgan, I am also granting this request on an emergency basis for 30 days, during which time a full home study and background check will be conducted. Ms. Collins will provide weekly supervision reports." She fixed Maxwell with a stern look. "Mr. Hampton, this is an extraordinary measure. I expect exemplary care and attention to Lily's needs." "Yes, Your Honor," Maxwell replied solemnly. "Court is adjourned. We'll reconvene in 30 days for a status hearing on both matters." Judge Watkins struck her gavel. Victoria immediately turned to her lawyer, speaking urgently. Maxwell put his arm around Lily's shoulders. "It's just the beginning," he said quietly, "but it's a good start." As they gathered their things to leave, Victoria suddenly approached, her eyes locked on Lily. Maxwell moved protectively in front of the girl. "This is all your fault," Victoria hissed at Lily, her perfect facade crumbling. "I had no right to interfere in our lives." "Step back, Victoria," Maxwell warned, his voice low. "She's a nobody, Max, some foster kid who broke into our property. And now you're letting her live in our home. What about our family?" "Our family?" Maxwell repeated incredulously. "You abandoned our son in a hot car and left him to die. Lily saved him. She's shown more care for Ethan in one day than you have in years." Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You'll regret this, Max. Both of you will." She turned and stormed out, her lawyer hurrying after her. Daniel approached, concern etched on his face. "That sounded like a threat. We should document it." Maxwell nodded, still shaken by the encounter. "I never thought she could be so cold." "People show their true colors when cornered," Daniel said grimly. "We should be careful. Victoria has a lot to lose here, financially and socially." Lily, who had remained silent during the exchange, finally spoke. "She really hates me." Maxwell crouched to meet her eyes. "She's angry and looking for someone to blame." "None of this is your fault, Lily. You did the right thing." Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered, alerted by courthouse sources to the high-profile case. Camera flashes erupted as Maxwell, Lily, and their legal team emerged. "Mr. Hampton, is it true your wife endangered your son? Is this the girl who rescued the Hampton heir? Are you planning to adopt her, Mr. Hampton?" Daniel quickly ushered them toward the waiting car, shielding Lily from the cameras. "No comment at this time," he repeated firmly. In the back seat of the luxury SUV, Lily finally exhaled, releasing tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Is it always going to be like this now?" Maxwell sighed. "The media attention will die down eventually, but the legal battles, those might take some time. What happens next?" Lily asked, suddenly feeling very small in the large vehicle. "Next we go home," Maxwell said simply. "We tell Ethan the good news that you're staying, at least for now. And then we start building whatever this new life looks like, one day at a time. Home." The word felt strange to Lily. In 4 years of foster care, she'd never called any place home. Even before that, when her mother was still alive but lost in a haze of addiction, their various apartments had never felt safe or permanent enough to be called home. The car pulled away from the courthouse, leaving the shouting reporters behind. As they drove through the leafy streets of Greenwich, Lily watched the mansions and manicured lawns pass by, still not quite believing that she would be living in such a place even temporarily. "Mr. Hampton?" she asked suddenly. "Maxwell," he corrected gently. "Or Max, if you prefer." "Maxwell," she tried, the name feeling formal on her tongue. What if Victoria tries to hurt Ethan again? Or me?" Maxwell's expression darkened. "She won't get the chance. I promise you that. Both you and Ethan will be safe." Lily nodded, wanting to believe him. She'd heard promises before from social workers, foster parents, even her own mother. Few had ever been kept. But something about Maxwell Hampton was different. There was a steadiness to him, a quiet determination that made his words feel like more than empty reassurances. As they pulled through the gates of the Hampton estate, Lily saw Ethan waiting on the front steps with Eleanor. The boy jumped up and down when he spotted the car, his face alight with excitement. "They're back! They're back!" he shouted, racing down to meet them as the car stopped. Maxwell stepped out first, sweeping his son into a hug. "Hey, buddy. Were you good for Aunt Eleanor?" "Uh-huh." "Did Lily get to stay? Did the judge say yes?" Maxwell smiled, looking over at Lily as she climbed out of the car. "Why don't you ask her yourself?" Ethan turned to Lily expectantly. For a moment she was overwhelmed by the hope in his eyes, by the weight of expectation from this small boy, who had somehow decided, in the space of a day, that she belonged in his life. "I get to stay," she said, a smile breaking across her face. "For now, anyway." Ethan whooped with joy, throwing his arms around her waist. "I knew it. I told Aunt Eleanor the dinosaur would bring good luck." Lily laughed, surprised by how natural it felt. "I think you were right." As they walked toward the house together, Ethan chattering excitedly about all the things they could do now that Lily was staying, she felt something unfamiliar stirring inside her, a cautious optimism she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. This wasn't her happy ending. She was too wise to believe in those. But maybe, just maybe, it was a new beginning. Behind them, unseen, a sleek black car pulled up to the estate gates. Inside, Victoria watched the scene with cold fury in her eyes. Beside her, her lawyer spoke urgently about strategy and damage control, but she barely heard him. Her gaze remained fixed on the girl who had ruined everything. The girl who had somehow managed to steal not only her husband and son, but also her secure future. "This isn't over," Victoria murmured, more to herself than to her companion. "Not by a long shot." The first week of Lily's stay at the Hampton estate passed in a blur of new experiences. Her bedroom redecorated to her hesitant specifications. "Whatever you like is fine," she kept saying, until Eleanor gently coaxed out her preferences for purple walls and astronomy-themed bedding. A closet filled with clothes that actually fit, selected during a shopping trip, that left Lily overwhelmed by choices she'd never had before. Meals served regularly 3 times a day, with snacks available whenever she wanted them. A concept so foreign, she kept asking permission before taking anything from the kitchen for days. Throughout it all, Ethan remained her constant companion, showing her around the grounds, introducing her to his favorite hiding spots, and treating her like she'd always been part of his life. His resilience amazed her. Despite what had happened, he seemed remarkably untroubled, adapting quickly to Victoria's absence. Kids are adaptable. Dr. Lawrence, the child psychologist Maxwell had hired for both children, explained during one of Lily's sessions. Ethan's young enough that with proper support he'll likely process this trauma well. "And you, Lily? How are you adapting to all these changes?" Lily sat across from the kind-faced woman, fidgeting with the sleeve of her new sweater. "It's a lot," she admitted. "Sometimes I wake up and forget where I am. I keep thinking someone's going to tell me it was all a mistake and send me back." Dr. Lawrence nodded understandingly. "That's a very normal reaction for someone who's experienced the kind of instability you have. Your brain is protecting you, preparing for disappointment because that's what it's learned to expect. Will it ever stop doing that? With time and consistent positive experiences, yes. Your brain will gradually learn that this new situation is stable and safe." The doctor leaned forward slightly. "But Lily, it's also okay to acknowledge that this is a complicated situation. You've been thrust into the middle of a family crisis not of your making." Lily thought about this. "I don't regret what I did," she said finally. "Saving Ethan, I mean. But sometimes I feel guilty, like I broke up their family." Dr. Lawrence shook her head firmly. You didn't break anything, Lily. You exposed something that was already broken. There's a big difference. Meanwhile, Maxwell was adjusting to his new reality as well. He'd taken a temporary leave from the day-to-day operations of Hampton Development to focus on his expanded family and the ongoing legal battles. His executive team had been surprisingly supportive once he explained the situation, though the scandal had inevitably affected the company's stock price. The board's concerns are legitimate, Daniel told him during a strategy session in the Home Office, but they're temporary. Once the media circus dies down and people see you focusing on being a good father, public opinion will shift back in your favor. Maxwell stared out the window, watching Lily and Ethan playing badminton on the lawn, their laughter carrying through the glass. I don't care about public opinion, Dan. I care about those two out there. Daniel smiled slightly. That attitude is exactly why you'll weather this storm. Speaking of which, Victoria's legal team has requested a meeting to discuss divorce terms. Maxwell turned, frowning. Already? It's been barely a week since the hearing. She's moving quickly, trying to secure her financial position before the criminal investigation progresses. Daniel placed a document on the desk. The prosecutor is seriously considering charges of child endangerment, possibly even attempted murder. Maxwell blanched. Murder? I never thought... Even with everything that happened, I never imagined she actually wanted Ethan to... The prosecutor believes there's evidence of intent, Daniel said gently. The security footage, the fact that she specifically chose the hottest day of the year during a heat advisory, her failure to check on him for over 3 hours despite multiple opportunities. And apparently they've uncovered some concerning communications. What kind of communications? Daniel hesitated. Text messages between Victoria and someone named Jonathan Reynolds discussing life insurance policies on both you and Ethan. Dated several weeks before the incident. Maxwell sat down heavily, the color draining from his face. My God. There's more. Financial records show she's been systematically moving assets into accounts under her maiden name for months, and she recently inquired about real estate in countries without extradition treaties with the US. I never knew her at all, did I? Maxwell whispered. Daniel placed a supportive hand on his friend's shoulder. Don't blame yourself, Max. She fooled everyone. Outside, oblivious to these dark revelations, Lily was teaching Ethan how to properly serve the shuttlecock. The boys' coordination was improving, but he still missed more often than not, sending them both into fits of laughter with each wild swing. Like this? Ethan asked, mimicking Lily's stance. Almost. Keep your wrist loose like this, she demonstrated again. From across the lawn, Rebecca Shaw, Ethan's nanny, watched them with a smile. She'd been initially wary of Lily's sudden presence, protective of her young charge, but had quickly warmed to the girl. Lily was gentle with Ethan, patient in a way that spoke of an old soul who had seen too much too young. They're good for each other, Eleanor commented. Joining Rebecca on the terrace with 2 glasses of lemonade, Rebecca accepted one gratefully. I've never seen Ethan this happy, honestly. Even before, everything he was always a bit reserved, watchful like he was trying to avoid saying the wrong thing. Eleanor nodded sadly. Victoria had that effect. Maxwell never saw it. She was careful to maintain the perfect mother image when he was around, but the rest of us saw glimpses. I tried to tell him, Rebecca admitted. Last year, after the stairs incident, I didn't believe it was an accident, not with the way she'd been speaking to Ethan that day. But Mr. Hampton, he didn't want to see it. None of us wants to believe someone we love could harm a child, Eleanor said softly. But he sees the truth now. That's what matters. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Meredith Collins for her scheduled weekly check-in. The social worker had been meticulous in her monitoring, thorough in her documentation, and increasingly supportive of Lily's placement with the Hamptons. Good afternoon, she greeted them, setting down her ever-present briefcase. How has the week been? Eleanor smiled. See for yourself, she said, gesturing to the children playing on the lawn. Meredith observed them for a moment, her professional demeanor softening slightly. She looks happy. She's starting to be, Eleanor agreed. There are still moments, nightmares, anxiety about the future. But Dr. Lawrence says she's making remarkable progress. And Ethan? How is he coping with everything? Rebecca joined the conversation. He asks about his mother occasionally, but he doesn't seem particularly distressed by her absence. If anything, he seems relieved. Meredith made notes in her file. That's consistent with the psychological evaluation. Children are intuitive. They know when someone's presence is harmful, even if they can't articulate it. She looked up. And Mr. Hampton? Holding up remarkably well under the circumstances, Eleanor replied. He's completely devoted to both children now. He's even coaching Ethan's T-ball team, something he always left to the nannies before. Meredith nodded, continuing her assessment. She interviewed Lily privately, as required by protocol, asking detailed questions about her care, education plans, and emotional well-being. Though still cautious by nature, Lily answered more openly than in previous sessions. "And do you feel safe here, Lily?" Meredith asked, the same question she'd posed each visit. Lily nodded, then paused. "There was a car outside the gates yesterday. A black one. I think Victoria was in it, watching the house." Meredith frowned. "Did you tell Maxwell about this?" "No, I didn't want to worry him. He's already dealing with so much." "Lily," Meredith said gently but firmly, "part of being in a family is sharing concerns, not hiding them to protect others. If you saw Victoria near the property, that's something Maxwell needs to know. It could be a violation of the protective order." Lily looked down. "I'll tell him." Later that evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Lily found Maxwell in his study reviewing documents. She knocked hesitantly on the open door. "Lily," he smiled, immediately setting aside his work. "Everything okay?" She entered, perching on the edge of a leather armchair. "I need to tell you something. Yesterday, when I was outside with Ethan, I saw a black car parked across from the gates. I think Victoria was inside, watching us." Maxwell's expression darkened. "Are you sure it was her?" "Pretty sure. The car was far away, but I recognized her hair." Maxwell made a note. "Thank you for telling me. I'll have security review the camera footage and inform our attorney." He studied her worried face. "Try not to let it upset you. The gates are secure and we have round-the-clock security now. She can't get to either of you." Lily nodded but didn't look convinced. "What if the judge changes their mind? About me staying here, I mean." Maxwell set down his pen. "Lily, I want you to understand something. When I asked for temporary guardianship, it wasn't just a reaction to you saving Ethan. It was because I saw something special in you. A strength, a compassion that's remarkable in anyone, let alone someone who's faced what you have." He leaned forward. "The 30-day hearing is coming up, and I've been thinking a lot about what happens next. If you're comfortable with it, I'd like to petition for permanent guardianship, possibly even adoption down the road." Lily's eyes widened. You want to adopt me?" "Only if that's something you might want too," Maxwell said carefully. "There's no pressure and nothing has to be decided right away. But I want you to know that as far as I'm concerned, you've become part of this family, not temporarily, not as a guest. As Lily Hampton, if you'd ever want that name." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. She'd learned early not to cry. Tears had never changed anything in her experience, but these were different. These weren't tears of pain or fear, but of something unfamiliar. "Hope, maybe, or belonging." "I'd like that," she whispered. But, Maxwell prompted gently when she didn't continue. "But what if she tries to stop it? Victoria, I mean. She hates me." Maxwell's expression grew serious. "Victoria's opinion no longer matters in this household, Lily. Her actions have forfeited her right to have any say in our family decisions. And legally the evidence against her is mounting. Her focus right now is on avoiding criminal charges, not on fighting your placement here." What Maxwell didn't share was what Daniel had told him earlier, that Victoria's legal position was rapidly deteriorating as the investigation uncovered more evidence of premeditation. The prosecutor was building a case suggesting the incident with Ethan was part of a larger plan to eliminate both Maxwell and his son, clearing the way for Victoria to inherit the Hampton fortune. It was too disturbing, too adult a concept to burden Lily with. "Try not to worry," he said instead. "Focus on settling in, on school starting next month, on helping Ethan adjust. The legal matters are my responsibility." Lily nodded, though her expression remained troubled. "Maxwell, can I ask you something else?" "Anything." "If If you adopt me someday, would I have to call you Dad? The question caught him by surprise. No, Lily, you wouldn't have to call me anything you're not comfortable with. Maxwell is fine, or Max, or whatever feels right to you. She seemed relieved. It's just, I had a dad before. He wasn't a good one. He left when I was 4 and I barely remember him. But I still had one. And you're not trying to replace him, right? Just like I'm not trying to replace Ethan's mom. Maxwell was struck by her insight. That's exactly right. We're building something new here, not replacing what came before. Good or bad, your past is part of who you are, and I would never want to erase that. Their conversation was interrupted by the security system's chime. Maxwell checked his phone, frowning at the alert. Someone's at the front gate. He pulled up the security camera feed. A taxi was parked outside, and a man in a rumpled suit was arguing with the security guard. Maxwell's frown deepened as he recognized Jonathan Reynolds, Victoria's personal trainer. Stay here, he told Lily, getting to his feet. I need to deal with this. Maxwell went downstairs and called the gatehouse. What does he want, Frank? First says he needs to speak with you urgently, sir. Something about Mrs. Hampton. He seems agitated. Maxwell considered for a moment, pat him down for weapons, then escort him to the study. Don't leave him alone. 10 minutes later, Jonathan Reynolds was seated across from Maxwell, looking considerably worse for wear than the confident personal trainer who had occasionally worked with the family. His eyes were bloodshot, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled. I know it's late, Jonathan began, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important. What do you want, Reynolds? Maxwell asked coldly. He'd learned about the affair weeks ago from the private investigator Daniel had hired. Jonathan ran a hand through his hair. Victoria's losing it, man. She's been calling me non-stop, showing up at my place. When I told her it was over, she threatened me. Said if she goes down, she's taking everyone with her. And you came here to what, warn me? Out of the goodness of your heart. Maxwell's tone made it clear he didn't believe that for a second. No, Jonathan admitted. I came because I'm scared of what she might do. She's been talking crazy, saying she needs to fix what went wrong, that the girl ruined everything. He leaned forward. She has a gun, Hampton. I saw it in her purse yesterday. Maxwell felt his blood run cold. Are you telling me Victoria is armed and making threats against my family? Not explicitly, but yeah, that's the gist of it. She's obsessed with the idea that everything would be fine if the girl hadn't interfered. Maxwell immediately picked up his phone, dialing Daniel. Get the police to Victoria's hotel room now, he instructed when his attorney answered. Reynolds is here saying she's armed and making veiled threats. He looked up at the former trainer. You'll make a formal statement to the police. It wasn't a request, and Jonathan knew it. He nodded resignedly. Yeah, I will. Look, I know I'm no saint in all this. The affair, the other things the police found on my phone. But I never wanted anyone to get hurt. You have to believe that. Maxwell studied him, seeing real fear in the man's eyes. If anything happens to my children because you waited to come forward. I know, Jonathan said quietly. That's why I'm here now. After Reynolds left with the police officers who arrived to take his statement, Maxwell checked every lock in the house personally, verified the security system was fully armed, and stationed an additional guard outside the children's rooms for the night. Only then did he return to his own room, though sleep eluded him. Across town, Victoria Hampton sat in her hotel suite, a glass of scotch in one hand and her phone in the other, scrolling through photos from what now felt like someone else's life. Charity galas with Maxwell, vacation photos, perfectly staged family portraits, the carefully constructed facade of the perfect family, the perfect life. All ruined now because of one homeless girl's interference. She set down her glass and opened the bedside drawer, reaching for the small handgun she'd purchased through a connection of Jonathan's. Her manicured finger traced its smooth metal surface. Everything could still be fixed, she whispered to the empty room, her once beautiful face now twisted with obsession and rage. Everything. The threat posed by Victoria cast a shadow over the Hampton household in the days that followed. Maxwell increased security measures, installed additional cameras, and ensured the children were never without supervision. Despite his efforts to maintain normalcy, the tension was palpable, especially to Lily, who had developed a keen sensitivity to shifting household atmospheres in her years of foster care. Something's wrong, she said to Eleanor one morning as they prepared breakfast together. Ethan was still asleep upstairs, and Maxwell had stepped out to take an urgent call. Everyone's being extra nice, but also extra careful, like they're worried about something. Eleanor hesitated, spatula in hand. She had promised herself never to lie to the children, but she also wanted to protect them from unnecessary fear. Maxwell received some concerning information, she said finally. It's being handled, but we're taking extra precautions for now. Lily nodded, absorbing this. It's Victoria, isn't it? She's trying to come back. What makes you think that? Eleanor asked, surprised by Lily's intuition. The extra security guard. The way no one will let us play outside anymore, unless Maxwell or Rebecca is right there with us. The police car that drives by every hour. Lily's observational skills were razor sharp, honed by years of having to read situations quickly for her own safety. Eleanor sighed. You're very perceptive, Lily. Yes, there have been some concerns about Victoria's state of mind. The police are monitoring her and we're being cautious. But you shouldn't worry, you and Ethan are perfectly safe. Does Ethan know? No, and we'd prefer to keep it that way. He's still processing everything that's happened. There's no need to frighten him further. Lily agreed, feeling protective of the younger child who had so quickly become important to her. She helped Eleanor finish preparing breakfast, then went to wake Ethan, maintaining the cheerful demeanor that had become her default around him. Meanwhile, in his home office, Maxwell was on the phone with the prosecutor handling Victoria's case. The news wasn't what he'd hoped for. What do you mean you can't hold her? He demanded, pacing the length of the room. Reynolds gave you a statement about the threats, about the gun. I understand your frustration, Mr. Hampton, the prosecutor replied calmly. But Mr. Reynolds' statement alone isn't sufficient for an arrest warrant, especially given his own legal troubles and questionable credibility. The officers who searched Ms. Hampton's hotel suite found no weapon, and she denied making any threats. Of course she denied it, and she obviously got rid of the gun after Reynolds tipped her off by coming here. Without the weapon or more substantive evidence of specific threats, our hands are tied legally. We've increased patrols in your area and flagged her in the system. If she violates the restraining order or makes any overt move, we can act immediately. Maxwell ended the call with a frustrated sigh. Daniel, who had been listening from the sofa, looked equally troubled. We need to consider hiring private security, Daniel suggested. Not just the estate guards, but personal protection for you and the children. Maxwell nodded. Already on it. The team starts tomorrow, but I hate that it's come to this. The kids shouldn't have to live in a fortress because of Victoria's obsession. It's temporary, Daniel assured him. The 30-day hearing is next week. Once your custody of Ethan is formalized and Lily's guardianship is extended, Victoria will have to accept that it's over. Will she, though? Maxwell wondered aloud. You've seen the psychiatric evaluation. The narcissistic traits, the lack of empathy. She doesn't see Ethan as a child to love. She sees him as a dawn broke clear and crisp over Greenwich, the kind of perfect late summer morning that promised endless possibilities. But for the Hampton household, rising early and moving with quiet efficiency, the day ahead held both promise and peril. The hearing before Judge Watkins was scheduled for 8 o'clock, an unusually early time that the judge had arranged specifically to accommodate the family's security concerns. Maxwell had barely slept, alternating between checking security monitors and preparing for their hasty departure to the Berkshires immediately after court. Bags were already packed and loaded into the SUV, ready for a swift exit once the legal matters were settled. Eleanor would drive separately with Rebecca, the nanny, while Maxwell's security team would escort the car carrying him and the children. Everyone ready? Maxwell asked, appearing in the kitchen where the others were gathered for a quick breakfast. His attempt at normalcy was undermined by the dark circles under his eyes and the tension evident in his shoulders. Ethan, still in his dinosaur pajamas and clutching his favorite T-Rex, nodded solemnly. Despite the adult's efforts to shield him, he had absorbed enough of the previous night's drama to understand that today was important. Will the judge let Lily stay with us forever? He asked, his young voice full of concern that such a fundamental thing could be in question. Maxwell ruffled his son's hair affectionately. That's what we're hoping for, buddy. The judge is very smart and wants what's best for everyone. Lily said nothing, pushing cereal around her bowl without eating. The weight of expectation, of hope, felt too heavy to bear. She'd learned long ago not to count on things working out, not to invest too much in outcomes beyond her control. But despite her best efforts at emotional detachment, she found herself desperately wanting this day to go well, wanting to remain part of this unlikely family that had formed around her. "Lily," Eleanor said gently, noticing her untouched breakfast, "you should try to eat something. It's going to be a long morning." Lily obediently took a spoonful, though she couldn't taste it. "I'm ready whenever everyone else is," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. The drive to the courthouse was tense and quiet. Security vehicles flanked their SUV, a visible reminder of the threat that still loomed over them. Maxwell used the time to go over last-minute details with Daniel via phone, while Ethan dozed against Lily's shoulder in the back seat. "He trusts you completely," Maxwell observed, glancing at them in the rearview mirror. Lily looked down at the sleeping child, his face peaceful despite everything. "I won't let anything happen to him," she said simply, the words a promise to both Maxwell and herself. The courthouse was nearly empty when they arrived, only essential staff present at this early hour. Judge Watkins had arranged for them to use a private entrance, minimizing their exposure. Victoria, they were informed, had been released from custody that morning, but was required to appear with her attorney at 8:30, giving Maxwell's family a half-hour head start to settle in and prepare. Inside the courtroom, Meredith Collins was already waiting with a thick folder of reports. She greeted them with a professional smile that softened when she saw the children. "Good morning, Lily. Hello, Ethan. How are you both feeling today?" "Okay," Lily answered for both of them, while Ethan shyly hid behind her. Meredith crouched down to Ethan's level. "There's a special waiting room for kids with books and toys. My colleague, Miss Peterson, is going to stay with you while the grown-ups talk to the judge. Would that be all right?" Ethan looked uncertainly at his father. "Will Lily come too?" Maxwell shook his head gently. "Lily needs to talk to the judge herself, buddy. But it won't be for long, and then we can all go to the lake house like we planned." After some coaxing, Ethan went with the court-appointed child advocate, though he cast worried glances back at Lily until they disappeared down the hallway. Judge Watkins entered precisely at 8 o'clock. The hearing began with a review of the emergency orders issued at their previous appearance and an update from all parties. Maxwell's attorney presented evidence of the continued threat posed by Victoria, including police reports from the previous night's incident. Meredith Collins submitted her comprehensive assessment, strongly recommending that Lily remain with the Hamptons. "In my 15 years with Child Protective Services, I've rarely seen a child adapt so positively to a new placement," she testified. "The bond that's formed between Lily and both Mr. Hampton and Ethan is remarkable, especially given the short time frame. Removing her now would be detrimental to her emotional well-being." When it was Lily's turn to speak privately with the judge in chambers, she found herself surprisingly calm. Judge Watkins's office was warm and less intimidating than the courtroom, with family photos and children's artwork displayed alongside legal texts. "Lily," the judge began kindly, "I want you to know that your thoughts and feelings are very important in this decision. I need to ask you some questions, and I'd like you to answer as honestly as possible. Can you do that for me?" Lily nodded, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Do you want to continue living with Mr. Hampton and Ethan?" "Yes," Lily replied without hesitation. "Why is that?" Lily considered the question carefully. "They make me feel safe," she said finally, "and needed. Ethan needs me, and I think Maxwell needs me too in a different way." "How so?" "He was sad before, even when he was trying to hide it. Victoria didn't love Ethan the right way, and Maxwell knew it somehow, but he couldn't let himself see it. I think I helped him see the truth, and now he can be the dad he really wants to be." Judge Watkins nodded thoughtfully. "That's very insightful, Lily. You're quite perceptive for your age." "You have to be in foster care," Lily replied matter-of-factly. "You have to read people quickly, figure out what they really want, what makes them angry, what makes them kind. And what have you read in Maxwell Hampton?" Lily didn't hesitate. "He's good, really good, all the way through. He makes mistakes sometimes, and he feels guilty about not protecting Ethan before, but he's trying so hard to fix everything now. And he doesn't treat me like I'm just some charity case. He acts like I belong there, like I always did." The judge made some notes, then looked up with a gentle smile. "Thank you for your honesty, Lily. I have just one more question. Are you afraid of Victoria Hampton?" Lily's expression darkened slightly. "Not for myself. I've dealt with scary adults before. But I'm afraid for Ethan and—" She hesitated. "Sometimes I'm afraid of what might happen if she can't accept that she's lost." By 8:30, they were back in the courtroom, waiting for Victoria's arrival. Maxwell sat rigid with tension, checking his watch repeatedly. Daniel conferred quietly with Patricia, their expressions growing increasingly concerned as the minutes ticked by. At 8:45, Judge Watkins addressed the room. "Mr. Sawyer, have you had any contact with your client this morning?" Victoria's attorney rose, clearly uncomfortable. "Your Honor, I spoke with Mrs. Hampton at 7 a.m. to confirm our meeting at the courthouse. She assured me she was on her way. I've been trying to reach her for the past 20 minutes without success." Maxwell exchanged worried glances with Daniel. Victoria's absence was concerning on multiple levels. If she had chosen to skip the hearing, she was effectively abandoning her legal fight. But given her recent behavior, there was a more troubling possibility. Judge Watkins seemed to share this concern. "Given Mrs. Hampton's recent actions and the security issues raised, I'm inclined to proceed without her. However, I would ask that the court officer contact the Greenwich Police Department to conduct a welfare check at Mrs. Hampton's last known address." While they waited for information, the judge reviewed the final reports submitted by the various experts involved in the case. The consensus was clear. Ethan should remain in his father's sole custody, with no unsupervised visitation by Victoria, until she completed extensive psychiatric treatment, and Lily's placement with the Hamptons should be made permanent, with a path to possible adoption if all parties remained willing after a stable period. Just as Judge Watkins appeared ready to issue her ruling, the courtroom doors burst open. Everyone turned expecting to see Victoria, but instead a police officer entered and approached the bench, speaking quietly to the judge. Her expression remained neutral, but there was a new tension in her posture as she addressed the court. "I've just been informed that Mrs. Hampton cannot be located. Her hotel room has been vacated, and her vehicle is missing. Given this development, and the evidence presented regarding her recent threatening behavior, I am issuing an emergency protective order for all members of the Hampton household, effective immediately." Maxwell felt a chill run down his spine. Victoria's disappearance confirmed his worst fears. She wasn't giving up. She was changing tactics. The judge continued, her voice firm. "In light of all the evidence presented, and with the best interests of both children as my primary concern, I am granting permanent sole custody of Ethan Hampton to his father, Maxwell Hampton, with no visitation rights for Victoria Hampton until such time as she completes court-mandated psychiatric evaluation and treatment." She turned her attention to Lily. "Regarding Lily Morgan, I am extending the temporary guardianship for an additional 6 months, with the explicit understanding that this period is to allow for transition to permanent guardianship and possible adoption, should all parties remain in agreement." Relief washed over Maxwell, despite the shadow cast by Victoria's disappearance. The legal protections they sought were in place. Now they just needed to ensure the physical safety of their newly affirmed family. "Your Honor," Daniel stood, "given the circumstances, we would like to request a temporary relocation order that would allow Mr. Hampton to take the children out of state without violating any custody arrangements." "Granted," Judge Watkins replied immediately. "I understand the security concerns, Mr. Hampton. Take whatever measures you feel necessary to ensure the children's safety. The court will issue all appropriate notifications to law enforcement." As they prepared to leave the courthouse through the secure exit, Meredith pulled Maxwell aside. "The Berkshire's house, is it registered in your name?" she asked quietly. Maxwell nodded, then understood her concern. "But we have several properties. Victoria only knows about the main vacation home in Lenox. We're going to a smaller cabin near Stockbridge that I purchased through a business entity. She doesn't know it exists." Meredith seemed relieved. "Good thinking. And please keep me updated on your situation. I'll continue to check in regularly as required, but I'm also available any time if Lily needs support." They collected Ethan from the children's waiting room. where he had been happily playing with a set of wooden blocks. His face lit up when he saw them, especially when Lily gave him a thumbs-up sign to indicate good news. "Are we going to the lake now?" he asked excitedly, seemingly untroubled by the morning's proceedings. "Yes, buddy, we're heading there right now," Maxwell assured him, grateful for his son's resilience. The security team escorted them to the waiting vehicles, everyone moving with heightened vigilance. Eleanor and Rebecca had already departed for the Berkshires with most of their luggage, leaving only the essentials in Maxwell's SUV. As they pulled away from the courthouse, Lily noticed Maxwell constantly checking the mirrors, scanning for any sign of pursuit. The convoy of security vehicles surrounding them should have been reassuring, but instead emphasized the reality of their situation. They were fleeing, not vacationing. "She won't find us, will she?" Lily asked quietly, careful that Ethan, absorbed in a handheld game, couldn't hear. Maxwell met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "No. The cabin is very private, not connected to our family name in any way, and we have excellent security in place." Lily nodded, trying to take comfort in his confidence. As they merged onto the highway heading north, leaving Greenwich behind, she found herself thinking of the strange journey that had brought her here. Just over a month ago, she had been a hungry, lonely girl sneaking onto an estate looking for food. Now she was legally tied to that same family, with the promise of permanence on the horizon. Life could change so quickly, sometimes for the worse, but sometimes unexpectedly for the better. The drive to the Berkshires took just under 2 hours. As they wound through increasingly rural roads, the landscape transformed from suburban affluence to natural beauty, dense forests, rolling hills, glimpses of serene lakes. Even the air felt different, cleaner somehow, carrying the scent of pine and approaching autumn. The cabin, when they finally reached it after turning down a nearly invisible private road, was nothing like Lily had expected. She had imagined another mansion, perhaps slightly smaller than the Greenwich estate. Instead, they arrived at a rustic yet elegant wooden structure nestled against a hillside, overlooking a small, pristine lake. It was large by normal standards, perhaps 4 bedrooms, but modest by Hampton standards, with a wraparound porch, stone chimney, and floor-to-ceiling windows capturing the spectacular view. "It's beautiful," Lily breathed as they climbed out of the car. "It's my favorite place," Maxwell admitted. "I bought it 3 years ago just for our family. Victoria came once and decided it was too primitive for her tastes, even though it has every modern amenity. She preferred the bigger house in Lenox where she could entertain." Ethan had already scrambled onto the porch, pressing his face against the glass doors to peer inside. "Dad, there's a huge fireplace. Can we make s'mores tonight?" "Absolutely," Maxwell promised, smiling at his son's enthusiasm. The security team conducted a thorough sweep of the property before allowing them inside. 2 guards would remain on site at all times, with additional patrols covering the perimeter. The cabin's existing security system had been upgraded with motion sensors, cameras, and direct lines to both the local police department and a private security firm. Despite these sobering reminders of the threat they faced, the interior of the cabin felt immediately welcoming. Eleanor had arrived ahead of them and had already prepared lunch, with fresh flowers on the dining table and beds made up with cozy flannel sheets against the mountain chill. "This will be your room, Lily." Maxwell showed her to a corner bedroom with windows on 2 sides, looking out over both the lake and the forest. Someone, Eleanor, she guessed, had added touches to make it feel personal. A reading lamp by the bed, a stack of books on the nightstand, even a small telescope by the window. For stargazing, Maxwell explained, seeing her curious look at the telescope. "The night skies here are incredible. Barely any light pollution. I remembered you mentioned being interested in astronomy." Lily was touched that he had remembered such a small detail from one of their conversations. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything. No thanks needed. This is your home now too, Lily. All of our homes are." The rest of the day passed in a blur of simple pleasures, exploring the property, skipping stones on the lake, helping Eleanor prepare dinner in the spacious kitchen. By evening, they had settled into a comfortable routine that felt surprisingly normal, despite the security personnel discreetly positioned around the property. After dinner, as promised, they built a fire in the massive stone fireplace and made s'mores. Ethan giggling as melted marshmallow dripped down his chin. Watching the firelight dance across the faces of her new family, Lily felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. Later, after Ethan had been tucked into bed, Maxwell found Lily on the porch, wrapped in a blanket against the night chill, gazing at the stars through her new telescope. "Finding any constellations?" he asked, settling into a chair beside her. "Cassiopeia," she pointed. "And over there is the Big Dipper. The sky is so clear here you can even see the Milky Way." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The only sounds the gentle lapping of the lake against the shore and the distant call of an owl. "Are you worried?" Lily finally asked, the question she'd been holding back all day. "About Victoria, I mean." Maxwell considered his answer carefully. "Concerned, yes, but not immediately worried. We've taken every possible precaution, and the authorities are actively looking for her. She can't hide forever. What happens when they find her? She'll face criminal charges for endangering Ethan, violating the restraining order, and possibly more depending on what the investigation uncovers. She'll get the help she needs, which is important too." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think she was always like this? Or did something happen to make her change?" "That's a profound question," Maxwell said, impressed by her insight. "I don't think people change fundamentally, but I think circumstances can reveal what was always beneath the surface. The Victoria I thought I married was kind, vibrant, charming, but looking back there were always signs of something darker, a coldness, a self-focus that I mistook for independence." He sighed deeply. "I was so determined to have the perfect family that I ignored the red flags. When Ethan was born and she showed no interest in him, I told myself she just needed time to bond. When she became increasingly distant, I blamed my work schedule, my frequent business trips. I made excuses because I didn't want to face the truth." "That's why you missed what was happening with Ethan," Lily said, understanding rather than accusing. "Yes, and I'll never forgive myself for that failure." Lily was quiet for a moment. "My mom used to say that forgiveness isn't something you give to others, it's something you give to yourself. She had a lot of things to forgive herself for." Her voice grew soft with memory. "She wasn't perfect. She had problems with addiction and made a lot of mistakes. But she loved me and she tried her best. That's all anyone can really do, isn't it? Try their best with what they know at the time." Maxwell felt humbled by the wisdom in her young voice. "Your mother sounds like she was a remarkable woman to have raised such a remarkable daughter." Lily smiled sadly. "She would have liked you. She always said I deserved better than what she could give me. I think she would be happy knowing I found a good home." The conversation shifted to lighter topics as the evening progressed, plans for the days ahead, which hiking trails to explore, whether Ethan was ready to try fishing. Eventually, Lily's yawns became more frequent, and Maxwell suggested she get some rest. "We've had a big day," he reminded her. "And tomorrow is just about being together, being a family. No court appearances, no legal papers, no rushing around. Just us." Lily liked the sound of that. As she headed to her room, Maxwell called after her softly. "Lily? Thank you." She turned, puzzled. "For what?" "For saving us. Not just Ethan that day, but all of us. You saved me from my blindness, from the lie I was living. You gave us a chance at something real." Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the fireplace. For the first time since arriving at the Hampton estate, she allowed herself to fully believe that this new life might actually be permanent, that she had found not just a temporary refuge, but a true home. In the days that followed, they settled into a peaceful routine at the lakeside cabin. Mornings were spent exploring the property or taking short hikes through the surrounding woods. Afternoons often found them on the small dock, fishing or simply watching the play of sunlight on water. Evenings were for board games, stories by the fire, and for Lily, stargazing with her telescope. Security remained vigilant, but became less intrusive as days passed without incident. Regular updates from Daniel and the police confirmed that the search for Victoria continued, though there had been no significant leads. Her passport hadn't been used, her credit cards remained inactive, and her known associates claimed no knowledge of her whereabouts. As their second week in the Berkshires began, life had achieved a new kind of normal. Ethan and Lily started remote learning sessions with their respective schools, preparing for their eventual return to Greenwich and the start of regular classes. Maxwell maintained his business through video conferences, gradually resuming his responsibilities while still preserving ample family time. It was during one such ordinary morning that the family's newfound peace was finally secured. Maxwell was in his study on a video call when Daniel's name flashed on his cell phone. Excusing himself from the business meeting, he answered immediately. "They found her." "Max," Daniel said without preamble, "the Victoria's been apprehended." Maxwell sank into his chair, waves of relief washing over him. "Where? How?" "Canadian border. She was trying to cross with a fake ID. Border Patrol flagged her car because of the Bolo alert." Was she armed?" Maxwell asked, thinking of Reynolds' warning about the gun. "Yes, they found a handgun in the vehicle, unregistered, along with over $50,000 in cash and several fake identification documents. She's facing serious federal charges now, in addition to the state charges related to Ethan." After ending the call, Maxwell stood at his study window for several minutes, watching Lily and Ethan playing badminton on the lawn below, their laughter carrying up to him on the breeze. They were safe now, truly safe. Victoria would remain in custody pending multiple trials, facing years of incarceration and mandatory psychiatric treatment. He should tell them, he knew. But looking at their carefree faces, he hesitated. The shadow of Victoria had loomed over them for so long. He was reluctant to reintroduce her into their thoughts, even with news of her capture. Perhaps it could wait until evening, after their day of play and learning was complete. For now, he simply wanted to join them in the sunshine, to be part of the joy they had created together, against all odds. Setting aside his work, he headed downstairs and outside. "Dad," Ethan called, waving his racket. "Come play with us. Lily's teaching me how to serve." "I'd love to," Maxwell replied, his heart full as he crossed the lawn to join his children. His son by birth and his daughter by the grace of circumstances that had brought her into their lives at exactly the right moment. As he accepted a racket from Lily's outstretched hand, their eyes met, and he saw in her smile the same knowledge that had been growing in his own heart. This unlikely family, forged in crisis and bound by love rather than blood, was the most real thing any of them had ever known. The broken pieces of their separate lives had somehow fit together to create something whole and beautiful. Not perfect, they all carried scars from their pasts, but genuine and strong. A family built not on appearance or expectation, but on truth, courage, and the kind of love that sees beyond surface differences to the heart beneath. In a quiet moment that evening, after sharing the news of Victoria's capture and answering the children's questions as honestly as age-appropriate boundaries allowed, Maxwell found Lily once again on the porch with her telescope. "Jupiter's visible tonight," she told him as he joined her, "and 3 of its moons." Maxwell peered through the telescope at her direction, marveling at the clear view of the giant planet and its tiny satellites. "It's amazing to think about, isn't it?" Lily mused. "How small we are in the universe. But how huge the little things can be, the choices we make, the people we help, the chances we take." Maxwell looked at this remarkable child who had stumbled into their lives and changed everything with one brave act. "The smallest actions can have the biggest impacts," he agreed. "Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to do what's right, even when it's hard." Lily smiled up at the stars, at the vast universe that had somehow led her here, to this porch, to this family, to this moment of peace after so much turmoil. "Do you think we'll be okay now?" she asked softly. Maxwell put his arm around her shoulders, this child who had become his daughter in every way that mattered. "I know we will," he said with complete conviction. "We found each other against all odds. Everything else is just details. Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance, witnesses to the small miracle that had occurred below, the creation of a family from the broken pieces of 3 separate lives. A story that had begun with an act of desperation, a hungry child breaking a window, and ended with that same child finding her place in the world at last. Not the end of their story, Maxwell knew as he gazed up at the night sky with Lily, but rather the beginning of a new chapter, one they would write together day by day as the family they had become. A family founded not on obligation or appearance, but on the purest foundations of all, courage, truth, and love.